Hello and welcome to another episode of Autogefuhl. Today with me, AJ and Jonas. This weekend, you join us in sunny Croatia, and we have with us the new Opel or Vauxhall Corsa. It's so much more different on the inside, it's so much more different on the outside, plus there's a lot more technology that's going on underneath. A lot to talk about, let's get started. Front of the new Opel or Vauxhall Corsa is significantly different than the previous generations. But you guys will agree with me, right, when I say this is a little bit of a departure from the current design language. And what I mean by that is there's a lot more sharpness in the design. Before, the Opel Corsa was always a little bit round and curvy. It looked like a big jelly bean, right? But now look at all these straight lines, especially here in the LED daytime running light signature. It's straight, got a nice clean crescent cut. Straight lines down here for the fog lamp housing. By the way, you can get optional LEDs for that as well. Speaking of LED lights, you get standard LED lights in the top trims, so the Elegance and the GS line, but you can get the optional IntelliLux Matrix LED lights, which is, I think, really interesting to see in this B segment of car. Taking a look at the side profile of the new Corsa, that new design language and stance is all the more evident. I mean, this car has a very nice two-box design, whereas the previous generation, I think, would almost look like a monocab, tall MPV, mini MPV kind of a look. Now this is more agile looking, more aerodynamic, more dynamic, I would say. Also, thanks in part to that steep rake angle for the A-pillar, for the windshield, makes the car seem a lot more streamlined. So let's talk about what's changed and what hasn't in terms of the dimensions. What really hasn't changed is the width of the Corsa. It's still about 1.75 meters wide, but it's now about 40 millimeters longer, standing in at about 4.06 meters long. And of course, the wheelbase itself has been really stretched, and you can see it's pretty much at the corners of the car. Also interesting is that the height has been reduced by about 48 millimeters. So that's also why this car now feels a lot more squat and a lot more planted. In terms of the design lines, you can see one starting in the front, coming towards the back here and joining the rear tail lamp. So it's a very nice straight line which gives this car, again, that streamlined effect. It kind of looks fast even when it's standing still. That's what they're trying to achieve. So overall, I like this new design, but what do you guys think? Another benefit of this new platform is that it's much lighter than before, as well as being much stiffer. In fact, if you get the entry-level petrol engine variant of the Corsa, it's just under 1,000 kilos, about 980, which I think is fantastic. Because lightness means, of course, more fun to drive, but also more economical. So, let's take a look at the back now. And actually, from a distance, when I first saw the back, it kind of reminded me of the Kia Rio. What do you guys think? You know, the way the hatch is positioned, this large lip on the bumper, it's a little bit reminiscent. But nevertheless, this still has its own unique identity, I think. The Corsa can be had with a range of petrol, diesel, or a fully electric version for the powertrain. The electric version will only be available starting spring of next year. In terms of petrol engines, they are all a 1.2-liter three-cylinder unit. You can either have it with 75 PS, which is metric horsepower, and a 5-speed manual, or you can get it with 100 PS with the choice of 6-speed manual or an 8-speed automatic, or the one you see here, which has the turbocharged version of the engine, which makes 130 PS. This only comes with the 8-speed automatic. The diesel is actually a 1.5-liter four-cylinder diesel engine, which makes 102 PS. So this is actually the PSA a diesel engine, not the one you see in the Astra. They are all front-wheel drive only, even the electric car. So, pretty interested to see what this engine is capable of. Here we have the key fob, nice and chunky. You can release the tailgate as well. But let's open the door and check out the interior. The door itself opens fairly wide, as you can see. It's about almost a 85-degree angle, so it's easy to get inside. The opening itself is also fairly large. Let's take a look at the door really quick. Hard plastics on the top. This is a little bit padded, so which is nice to see. A dash of brushed aluminum effect plastic over here. And soft padded armrest, automatic windows and mirrors, and a very large bottle holder right here in the door. So pretty usable, but of course quite monotone in terms of color. What isn't monotone is the interior itself. As you can see, there's a very bright red dash of color right through the dashboard, which I think looks really nice, makes this car very appealing and youthful. There's also a lot of different textures, as you can see, and we'll take a closer look once we're inside. But I want to focus on the seats a little bit. As you can see right now, the seats are the sports seats, which have this red stripe in the middle, the two of them, and this nice V-shaped top of the seat. Let's hop inside and take a closer look. There is a handle if you need it. Yes, it is a little bit lower down. It's a car, it's not an SUV, but nevertheless, there's plenty of space. Ingress is quite easy again because of this large opening. I'm 5'8" or 1.7 meters, and I have quite a lot of headroom left. So even though this body is shorter than before, thanks to the way they have positioned and packaged the seats, which like I said are lower now, there's plenty of space. But let's take a closer look at the dashboard and all the other technology that this car has to offer. Look at how interesting just this section of the dashboard is. I think it's a great design because there's first of all different colors. You have the black, this nice bright red, this kind of gray metal effect plastic, and of course the black. But there's so many different textures. This has a nice kind of 3-point star kind of a design. It's also a soft touch, which is again great for this segment. And this is a little bit hard, but at the same time the texture is different. Even the way this infotainment system is angled towards the driver and facing up, so it's in his line of sight. I think they've really thought this out well.
But one of the biggest talking points of the new Corsa is that it comes with the optional digital instrument cluster. So right now you can see we're in the trip computer menu, and you can see that we were averaging about 7.6 liters for 100 kilometers over a few hundred kilometers that we drove prior to filming. But the truth is you can expect numbers lower than this. Somewhere in the low 5s is a reasonable amount. You can navigate between the different menus using the controls on the left stalk. But one of the things I don't like about this instrument cluster is that the dials are a little bit counterintuitive. Like for example, yes, you have the speedo right here in the middle. That's pretty nice, I guess. But the tachometer is just this bar in the bottom left-hand side, and you have the gear position indicator or the gear indicator on the top right. So it's a bit counterintuitive, and it doesn't really seem that sporty. In fact, if you're not really that interested or keen on the instrument cluster being digital, I would recommend just stick to the standard analog dials, because they anyway come with a TFT screen in the middle. But what is useful in this is that you can have the navigation map right here on the instruments, and yes, you can have it here as well as on the infotainment screen. There are several options for the infotainment touchscreen display that you can have. There's a 5-inch, there's a 7-inch, and then there is this 10-inch screen. Actually, at the moment, this has not been optimized because it's one of the early series production vehicles. That's why there's a lot of empty space on either side, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But nevertheless, you have a satellite radio, and you can of course connect your phone with Bluetooth. There's also inbuilt navigation, which is pretty good. It's again PSA technology, but it has things like 3D view with building projections, so kind of useful. All right, let's take a look in the back. The door doesn't open all that wide, to be honest, so the entry is a little bit limited, which might make it a bit tricky to load large child seats, but the door is also made of full hard plastic, also monotone, but there is a bit of storage space nevertheless.
Inside, you continue to see the red stripes on the seats, so it looks really nice. I think it makes the cabin look that much more special and inviting and fun. Let's step inside, see what the space is on offer. Interestingly, there is no handle for the passenger, the rear two seats. I think this is an oversight. And getting inside is a little bit of a squeeze because this gap is not that wide, so you have to kind of put your legs through here. And space in the back is not bad. It's not bad at all. I'm 5'8" or 1.7 meters. I have about this much of headroom. The seat is set to my driving position. It is quite low because that's how I like it. But if it was a little bit higher, maybe I would have been happier because I could have more space to keep my feet underneath. But because the back of the seats are scooped out, I have a little bit more knee room. But I wouldn't go as far as to say that this is like a revelation in terms of how spacious it is on the inside. It's good. It's a bit tight, but that's expected. Let's take a look inside the trunk. There is a release button just below the Opel logo. The hatch goes up fairly nicely. So as you could imagine, the trunk is much bigger than the previous generation. It is now 309 liters of boot space, but still not class leading. For example, the Seat Ibiza has about 355 liters of boot space. Nevertheless, the opening is really wide and it's a very rectangular area, so it's easy to load items in. Here is a standard cabin carry-on suitcase which fits in very nicely, and you can fit a couple more inside here. If you need more space, of course, it's very easy to just get rid of the parcel shelf like that. I don't want to put it down, I'm just going to leave it here. And you have easy access to the rear seats, which you can fold in a 60-40 fashion like that. But still, another thing you'll notice is that the floor is not completely flat, so you will have a little bit of this hindrance when the seats are folded, but still enough volume to carry perhaps, your new desk that you've bought in IKEA. Let's make hay while the sun shines, because the weather is supposed to turn pretty nasty later on, and we have some beautiful coastline here in Croatia, so let's make the most of it. First things first, go to sport mode. Now, a lot of things have changed. The engine is a lot more sonorous now, you can hear it. It also revs a lot faster, so the throttle response is also sharpened right now. The 8-speed automatic holds the gear for as long as it can to give you that all that torque that this engine has to offer. And the steering also becomes significantly heavier. So on winding roads like this, the engine sounds nice, and you can really hustle the car a little bit around the corner. And I can tell you that I'm fairly impressed with the body control. So let's start with that. This does not have any adaptable suspension. So it's just the same suspension that you get in the other trims, so the Elegance or the first edition or the other Corsas. But because the car is so lightweight, let's shift down. Because the car is so lightweight, it has such a neutral balance. Like right now, the tires are not squealing. There's barely any understeer. There's none at all. I mean, I have tremendous grip. Of course, I'm not going too quickly, but you do feel the speed because it's a small car. That sensation is there, so it's enjoyable. The engine sounds really nice and loud on the inside. That 3-cylinder burble makes it very enjoyable. And you don't have any kind of lift-off oversteer, so it's very well controlled. The suspension also, even without having any complex different kinds of damping modes or systems, it really controls the body quite well. So I think that is one of its strengths, and I've been driving this car a little bit already before we started filming, and it's something that I noticed and I analyzed and thought about, and it is pretty impressive for a car in this segment. Again, it's just light, and it makes such a big difference. Losing weight works wonders. Apart from that, the steering does get heavier, although it doesn't really give me any more feedback in the sport mode. In fact, overall, the steering is fairly numb, I would say. It's not terrible, but I really cannot feel what the wheels are doing as I go around corners. If I were to push them a little bit, it just has a very consistent weight, which doesn't change depending on how much each wheel is getting loaded, which actually is not a good thing. I would like to have a little bit more feedback, a little bit more, communication from the front wheels. This being the GS line, the strut towers have a little bit more bracing, so the front end is a little bit more stiffer. I'm not complaining, that's great. So you do feel that the car sticks to a line. Again, that neutral balance that this car has is a very good thing, but the steering is really letting it down. If the steering was a little bit more communicative, I think this really would have been a cracker of a small, fun, sporty little hatchback. Let's summarize today's episode of the new Opel or Vauxhall Corsa. With prices starting at around 14,000 euros for the base variant and the petrol engine, I think it's a really good value proposition, considering that you get this new platform and some of the safety features that come as standard. But if you opt for one of the higher trim lines, like the GS line, with some of the optional extras, you're looking at something around 20 to 24,000 euros, which again isn't that expensive. And that's one of the reasons why this car has been so popular worldwide. It's approachable, affordable price tag. So what did I like about this car? First of all, I think the design. This is something that Opel really wanted to highlight as well, and I do like this new design philosophy, this two-box design and this platform. I think it's a little bit more mature, and I do appreciate the sharper lines as compared to the round lines in the previous generation. I also liked the technology that this car has in terms of its safety features, driver assistance systems, even things like the digital instrument cluster and massaging seats, even though I personally might not pick these and these technologies are not the most sophisticated, it's nice to have in this segment. The chassis itself, I think, is also really nice. It's a lot more stiffer now, very light, and that really shows in its handling capabilities out on twisty mountain roads. What I probably didn't like so much is that instrument cluster, actually. I would personally not opt for that because I think it's a little bit counterintuitive, but apart from that, overall, it is a great package. So let me know what you guys think about this car. Put it down in the comments below. And as usual, keep watching Autogefuhl, and I'll see you guys next time.